Hitler, Nazi UFO base. And supposedly, we ought to discuss that there had been an activated event before with Hitler close to Antarctica from around the outer seas. But this itself runs to the equation of reverse extraterrestrial UFO technologies, and that they had certain military zones in time traveling with it, indicated with certain types of extraterrestrials that had cooperated on levels with the Nazis around World War II.
Everybody, welcome to episode 70. Blue, how are you doing?
Very good today, Mike.
Hey, what are we going to talk about today in episode 70?
Black Knight satellite theory. So supposedly two conspiracy theories enlightened into one, in accordance with the NASA and a supposed acclimated object, and also in coordinates with an SCP itself, fundamentally maintained through some type of dark material webbing. And that projected matter is incubated through some type of extraterrestrial link.
Wow. Wow, it's very interesting because, with Donald Trump and so forth in the past, in his first term, development of the Space Force, and now we're hearing about the Golden or Iron Dome and all sorts of exciting stuff. And I'm sure you have some insight there with your position with the Space Force. I can't wait to get into today's show. But before I do, I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. It really means a lot to us. Please make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share it with your friends, all that fun stuff. That's the one thing we do ask if you would be so kind. But again, thank you so much. And if you like the gear, we're not matching today, but we're still looking good here. If you like the gear, there's links on the post and on social media. We do respond to everyone on social media as well. You can contact us at any time. You can leave comments. We do respond. We do read those things. You are important to us. Blue, let's get right into it.
Absolutely. So in coordinates, what's going on with the Black Knight satellite theory? NASA's point of view is supposedly there were projective imagery sent. And the ISS is to be constructed when the images were taken. But it's the concerted action that goes with this, and the definitive motives that projects into it goes past more than 120 years of the actual object being seen. So supposedly there may be two similarities, but two different types of entities here. The proposition and transportation of a certain module could have been disengaged from the perimeters and set into the outer hemispheric codes of the Earth itself in space. But this gets interesting, like I have stated. When it goes into the SCP proportional part, it runs into a category class Keter. This object itself creates such a disturbance that it has been immobile, but it has been maneuvering around the entire planet for several years. They have been monitoring its actions, and anything supposedly that would get close enough to this type of object, it would create an electromagnetic or electrofield pull upon that. And that type of polarity pull, it can create collateral damage. There's a certain element itself in this grading system, and the effective element runs into dark material webbing structure. If dark material is incubated with certain other types of higher advanced materials and is controlled to a point, it can affect the layered structures of the electro fields around everything that extends within its perimeter. So let's say if it hit this planet, go past that satellite term, but think about this as an actual extraterrestrial object, or something that was categorized from another substantial cosmic layout elsewhere. And the field around it is outletted around the trajectory point here. If it hits certain objects, even if it hits the Earth itself, it would start sucking everything in around it and create an implosive effect.
I thought
it would create a catastrophic effect. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I thank you. I thought it was at the beginning here where you had indicated something about 120 years. Is that the age we've known about this?
Well, some have linked up to a possibility that this categorized certain satellite itself was supposedly spotted and seen over that amount of time. But other people, through their own theories, have stated that it could have been something over so many thousands of years. Since it was first recorded, the Black Knight, supposedly over 120. Some of the theorists believe that. But it also runs into, like I said, this SCP. And some of what the NASA is trying to polarize outwards. That, yeah, there could be a similar object in space that could have been detached from one of their space shuttles. But would its orbital speeds be in conjunction similar to this? That is catalyzed in so many other link-ups? And people need to notice that too. If it was just one thing, one normal thing, it would not link up to several other factors.
The whole thing about that window that you gave, 120 years, and now we're talking thousands of years. For all the Gen Zers and anybody younger, we haven't been in space that long. We haven't had the physical ability to put things in space that long. It's been less than 100 years, so well less than that. So I mean, put that in perspective. And then immediately, as you're talking, I'm picturing the extraterrestrial visits that we've gone over with world leaders in the past, and maybe this is some sort of thing in conjunction with them. Is this something that's I'm picturing extraterrestrial and an alliance with some of the white hats, if you would, on Earth?
It's a catalyzed dark material of an extraterrestrial origin. But if it goes too close to any proximity zone that is of a matter itself, it could cause a problem. So more or less, it's something that just needs to be stayed at a motive where it's at. Now, if there are similar objects out there like that and they're trying to cover up or gain motives through that, then obviously it's not the same thing. But this itself, when you look up an SCP, because it does have a number, and I believe that number is SCP-2460, it's linked up to several other things out there that people believe or think that it possibly could run through.
It's amazing.
It's an element of an extraterrestrial origin, but it's an element that consists of dark material. And there's possibly other similar terms that people are getting confused about.
You know, we had talked in the past about a Oumuamua, and now my mind flashes back to that. That's another object that we've discovered that may or may not be what it's represented to be. It's curious also because I'm thinking of all the things with dark space programs and all the things with, going up into space, the things that we know. There's probably a lot like this that we don't know, that we're not being told. And I'm sure if you look hard enough and far enough, we'll find out those things. Wow, I know we got a lot yet to talk about today. Is there anything else to wrap up about this Black Knight?
Well, I mean, there are similarities, like we had stated before, with certain ship in space that stayed there. Looked like a big, long meteorite and or comet we discussed about before. It's not the same thing, but there are affiliated sources that use some type of higher terrestrial origin or element, or conjuncture to even a material that has of an extraterrestrial origin altogether.
Wow.
And that's what goes into what we're going to talk about next, Antarctica.
Yeah,
We've
please, let's get
discussed
right
several
into it.
times before.
Please, I love talking about Antarctica. I think there's a lot more there than people think.
Absolutely. But we're going to get into the main motives of what we already know that NASA is doing in the areas there, but as well as the foundations of what goes into the forbidden zone and the occurrences of the electromagnetic fields. Now, Mount Erebus, the conjuncture that maintains that, runs into a certain NASA program and or programs. One of the NASA programs that they have runs into the robotic systems. And because Mount Erebus itself is on massive and is covered in ice, but just underneath them, they have massive tunnels filled with sorts of lavas and ice formations of unknown origin, as well as, I'm not going to say this, there are elements too of unknown origin, even the things that affect the geomagnetical fields.
Wow.
So what they are doing here is they're categorizing using a certain robot that would be able to climb through unknown variables of ice or potential ice matter in space, and coordinates of certain materials that are not known to others, and as well as learning where what goes on with the elements and what they can do with with the areas that they're controlling within space. So, like with NASA and the teams that they are working with there, they maintain through these certain robotic systems. I believe the name's Lemur of the current robot they would be using through the ice.
You know, it's amazing to me. This is all amazing to me because I think we've known about this for well over 100 years. I think that we've known about there's something that they're not telling us, and you're right on top of it, and I love it.
Well, it's also we run through satellites. They have several terms of utilizing through satellites and research there. ASTER instruments on Terra also used to monitor volcanic activity. And reflection radiometers, observing instrument launched, providing this scientists with critical information on the surface mapping as well as possible interior itself of the conditions. The ISAT-2, ice cloud and land elevation satellite, collects data on the elevation profile of Mount Terror, a nearby possibly extinct volcano. So we have to understand Antarctica has active volcanoes there, even though past the wall there is a linked zone. Below that ice, there is an actual land altogether that humankind is not even permitted, most of humankind is not even allowed permitted to go to. We call it the Agartha realms, the inner realms, the inner lands. And they do a lot of research and studies through various organizations, including space organizations there in Antarctica. And it gets more interesting, we talked about this before, Hitler, Nazi UFO base. And supposedly, we ought to discuss that there had been an activated event before with Hitler close to Antarctica from around the outer seas. But this itself runs to the equation of reverse extraterrestrial UFO technologies, and that they had certain military zones and time traveling with it, indicated with certain types of extraterrestrials that had cooperated on levels with the Nazis around World War II.
Crazy. I mean, we've talked about that before as well, and it's well documented on our shows. And by the way, just a quick reminder, you can always go back to any previous episode, and on the video where it's posted, there'll be an index, and you'll see the topic or the theme for that section of the show, and you just click the link next to it and it'll take you right to that topic. So if you ever want to go back, I do that all the time. I'm looking, I think I'm going to get a what do you call it, intern or something to help me cross-reference that, so it'll be a lot easier. But for now, you can just go ahead and click on that. I do that all the time. And yes, we were chasing the Nazis down there. We know when the Nazis came back, all of a sudden they had rocket technology. They just couldn't develop it fast enough. So what did we do? We bombed the hell out of them, won the war, and took those scientists. There's stuff that is right in front of our eyes all the time. And like you had indicated before with the Black Knight satellite technology, with the correlation with the SCP there as well, I think that's fascinating because, again, they hide it in plain sight. They do things right out in the open, and then you call it a conspiracy, or you call it oh, that's just something that's fake news or whatever. No, the fake news is the fact that you're faking everybody out in the first place. But again, the reason for that a lot of times is the general population, I don't think, can comprehend those things without their heads exploding, and I think people would go crazy and mad if they, if we told everybody today, hey, the mothership's landing tonight at midnight, be ready, people would lose their minds, right? I mean, I don't know what they would do, but this is all fascinating. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Keep on with Antarctica, because this is fascinating.
Oh, one more thing. Electrostatic repulsive fields. Understanding the definitions of certain areas defined with higher electromagnetic impulsive waves. Stuff that would affect the electrical equipment on a much more higher level than others. Now, Antarctica itself, too, including what scientists know about, has a certain type of dry air. But there is also a defined electrostatic molecular graphing point, a certain point that links up between the geomagnetical barrier and the lines of distributors itself into the inner realms and to the outer realms. And those coordinates can affect the way the electricity plays out. And it can knock it out very quickly. So they have to have a certain safety equipment through these zones. And it gets worse. It gets more interesting because if you go past to another area in Antarctica called the Forbidden Layer, the Forbidden Zone, it's just like it would be with the Bermuda Triangle and several others. We're going to discuss about that. And it affects the way the mind is, and it would actually push somebody away. It is a defined molecular electromagnetic webbing material that pretty much relocates the barrier where it is to where it should be. It can affect the mind to matter control, and it can also affect the electronics on a much higher stance, especially humans' electronics. You try to use GPS or something else or cameras, whatever, knock it out. Do no good whatsoever.
And that was key. I like your lighting effect there. I can still see you, but when you said it, knock it out, that's when the light went out. That was great. I know you timed that out perfectly. That's fascinating stuff. Tell me more about the Giza platform, though. That's something separate, but right. I mean...
the Giza platforms, running to the 3 trilateral platforms of the Gizas of Egypt itself. Think about Atlantis and how we had talked about the Sphinx before and how the underground systems run through the libraries and on vast tunnels. There are networks that run in control with certain extraterrestrials and NK gray races, as some of the Ankara. We had discussed about that too before with KGB, and they had found the mummified remains. Now, there are activated tunnels still in networks through these platforms that would affect an electromagnetic field, and it would categorize and create an extension that would knock out electronics, and it would knock out the fields around it and around its radius. There is also a higher defined field of electromagnetic polarity waves that can also create a defined stance of the way things can be motivated through the mind. Remember how we had talked before about controlling mind and matter scenario? And there are geomagnetical barriers or infrastructures that deal with the way the magnetics go
Yes.
within within the lands itself.
Right.
Well, it's similar. There are intact control variables that hit between links, and there are momentous links that go into the platforms underground itself.
I think it's kind of like an iceberg where we are only seeing a portion of the story up here. And I apologize for the hand signal there. I'm not trying to do an Elon Musk here or nothing like that. I'm not signaling anyone, but I'm just saying it's like an iceberg. You only see about 20 to 10% usually is what you see. And the mass is really underneath. What that's really about is what's underneath. And a quick science lesson for anybody while we're talking about this. This is how I disproved global warming on another platform. You see, you can take a cup of ice and you fill it up and you have 10% of the ice above, and then you fill the cup with water. And your theory as a climate screamologist would be, not you, Boo, but a person who's, they would say that when the ice does melt, it's going to overflow the cup. No, it doesn't. You know why? It's called displacement. It's like when you sit in a bathtub. Yes, the water will go up, but what are you going to do? If I add more to it, it'll overflow. If I don't add to it, the volume's not going to change. If anything, it's going to go down. So, again, apologize for the tangent, Blue. I really think that is a power plant of some sorts, a way for people
a
to
controlled variable of electromagnetic field frequencies and energies.
Yes,
exactly.
Crazy stuff, Blue. You're teaching me well. I'm learning all these things. Are we almost ready to get into the SCP Foundation?
We would like to discuss about the Bermuda Triangle. Well, we already know that there's a Bermuda Triangle that aligns with the oceanic perimeters, but there's also ones that go into space. The Bermuda Triangle space, or the South Atlantic anomaly, is formerly known and lies above the South Atlantic. Now, it also runs into the outer perimeters of space itself, and it has affected certain variables that run into things through NASA and the magnetic fields. They have a Van Allen radiation belt that comes closest to the Earth's surface, and that affects that magnetic field that's on its own. It could affect the spacecraft's onboard electronic systems, and as well as affects things that runs into certain other types of electric systems, electrical equipment.
It's crazy.
Is it a possibility that it's linked up to Bermuda Triangle on its own? That is a very it runs on a certain percentage that's more higher than normal because of the magnetic fields. All of these things that we discussed run on some type of similar higher magnetic field or zone. And it links up to the system, the planet. And it also can link up to other dimensions, other type of outer systems of the planet and in space.
I think that's key what you just said there last, because, there's theories for those of you who doubt certain things like our activity in space or where we can and can't go. We've talked about the firmament before. You can look that up. You got the smartest people in the world, and some people say it's fake. Some people say that, the moon landing was filmed. The Van Allen belts that you're talking about, discovered by Dr. James, I'm not sure if he was a doctor. It was James Van Allen back in the 58. They're able to tell that it's almost impossible to penetrate this, almost impossible to go through it without. We don't have the technology, and you're telling me that like in the 60s, we had less computerization and less power than you do with a cell phone, and we accomplished that, and then we went through the radiation belt? Stop. I'm just not believing it. I think it was all hype and political stuff. I believe we have the capabilities now to maybe penetrate it, but Blue, where do you stand? Do you think this is something that is impacting us, or is there this triangle like you're talking about that allows us to pass through it without peril?
Well, the magnetical variables that run in through the defined motions in certain areas can affect things. It affects or the electromagnetic fields. It affects things that run into that. And since everything is run on some type of electromagnetic field, there are areas that are higher because of the amounts of incubated energy that is being pushed into it. And that energy can create layers substantially. And the effective layers can knock out other things. Kind of similar if we're having certain knockouts with the sun itself. We say, oh, could it affect electronics? Think about that, the geomagnetical frequencies, because of the indicator and its point of effect. But these zones are stuck at one perimeter. It doesn't go outwards and then stop.
Crazy stuff, people. Crazy stuff, Blue. Crazy. I'm going to put up some nice diagrams here, for people to follow along with what you were talking about there. But it's stuff we've covered before in a way, but this is real important to start paying attention to it now. I think we really need to focus on not only Antarctica, but the North Pole area, the Arctic. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on politically with that region as well. So it's very interesting to me. And my thought is maybe it really is Antarctica, but they're trying to draw your thoughts and your focus away. No, look up here at the Arctic. Don't look down there. So I think that's a possibility as well. Crazy stuff. Let's get into the SCP Foundation.
SCP-352, I believe the witch. So appears to be a very old, emaciated woman of an undeterminate age and race. This gets interesting. It possesses a level of strength and speed much higher than what should be possible for a person of her perceived age and dimension. But because of this entity, it feeds mainly on human flesh. And it is not very nice per se. It's capable of growing a very thin hair-like strands from any part of her body, apparently at will. Now, let's get creepier. What these strands do, if they hit the molecular structure, it has an enzyme that produces in its hair, and if it hits the molecular structure, especially if human contact and the human tissue itself, it starts rapidly attacking the nervous systems, degenerating the way the humans are on react. So symptoms can manifest much less so than the bite. When it manifests less, it includes the hallucinations, euphoria, suppression of cognitive and logical thinking, and suppression of the pain receptors. When that happens and then that state persists, it can become permanent and end up killing the host. Now, bites from the SCP lead to a much higher exposure. And the variations that go with that go much more quickly into the host and could last for days. And the entity supposedly could just feed on it. It has a strong carnivorous diet, prefers human flesh, creates a web of hair, and it traps it within that entity, preying on it, preventing it from wandering away, as well as eating away the interior designs of the host. Supposedly, it was recovered in southern Russia. Why we got to deal? I'm not just saying, I know we have to deal with Chernobyl and stuff and we deal with all this weird stuff going on, and what could happen to coordinated effects of whether it's entities here or they're created on a paranormal stance. Then we have this thing, supposedly. So, could have been laboratory made, for all we know. And gone away, and now they have it in Foundation custody.
Crazy situation here, and I want to be clear, because there's a real person in the world, well, there was, I think she's passed, Baba Vanga, which is not to be confused with this SCP-352 Baba Yaga, which they're both Slavic in nature. They're both, old European times that we would think of, ladies with the babushka on and all that stuff, and she was blind, and it just raises questions, because then I picture that, and then I picture that mixed with like an insect or some sort of item that will paralyze its prey or what have you. So I think this whole thing with the doing things in public. Oh yeah, no, that's real. No, it's a conspiracy. You keep it half and half. Nobody really knows what's going on, and I find that very interesting. We have time to wrap up one more SCP today.
Oh, just one more thing, understanding about nuclear meltdowns in certain areas that are in the right variable, and that's a possibility that they could still have activated or inactivated scientific laboratories through that conjuncture. And it also goes to areas around its effect. I'm not sure where this is, but it was in some type of town, and they reported it as an enchanted forest. But still, there are main areas around the planet that there are more intact to people noticing than others. And they have a reason.
Let's go on to SCP-640.
Yes, SCP-640. It's interesting. Class Euclid, but it could become Class Keter if uncontrolled. It's a free-roaming sentient electromagnetic phenomenon, typically manifesting in several roughly circular spots of yellow-orange light, and between 18 to 57 millimeters in diameter, depending on the entity's current appetite and energy level. And it manifests in spots as of EHF radiation. It's capable of rapidly varying its wavelength. What gets interesting, though, with it is the spots of sunlight shining on a wall, typically in a child's room, will end up getting intact onto the skin's layer. And it's carnivorous in nature. It's capable of deriving the sustenance from the material of the earth animals and or entities, humans. It starts sucking out the sustenance from it from the inside out. It shows a marked preference for humans, though, in general, and apes mainly, especially children. Consumes it by inflicting burns upon the radius around it. And depending upon the severity and death, sometimes, obviously, it will kill the actual host if it is ate too much of it. And it will feed on the same prey repeatedly over time. They have been known proximities of not being able to keep it in place through the foundation. So the attempts to trying to destroy it has been unsuccessful, except in reflecting it and disrupting it, supposedly in a reflective room. So effects of visualization is being sought, though, because there are still variables that are happening across the planet that they cannot control.
To make a rudimentary picture for people, this is, in case you're just listening and not watching, this is like something on a microscopic scale. This is infection. Is that right?
Like an extraterrestrial hypercellular intact code. Something that on a cellular level that's not supposed to be considered normal, so it's more paranormal. And then and we have talked about other sicknesses and diseases of a paranormal religion, or it's a paranormal region, extraterrestrial region. So therefore, it could have been a scientific activational code that spread out into the air and contaminated other entities. That can be controlled proper. I don't want to talk about all these diseases and parasites and stuff nowadays that are more new. I wouldn't be surprised if they had something that was linked up into an actual entity itself and sought out into a variable upon other entities. So it's a mix.
Very interesting to me, because if you remember, there was that Will Smith movie. Don't get me started on Will Smith. The Independence Day. What ended up killing the visitors from another place? A disease, an infection, a virus. When the white Europeans came to settle this area of the globe, What ended up wiping out a lot of the indigenous people? A disease or a virus? What did they just try to unleash on the entire planet? So I find all this stuff very interesting because, again, these things are right out there in the open. So they can talk about them and then tell you it's a conspiracy theory in the next breath here. Amazing stuff, Blue. I love it when we talk about this SCP Foundation. Hey, let's get into the Space Force and Federation.
Absolutely. Space Force sets up team to sort out support for Iron Dome, that is Golden Dome. An essential effort to build a next generation missile shield. And there is a reason. So they began Pentagon drawing up plans after Trump's initial January 27th executive order, creation for a next generation missile shield. The shield, with the help of certain space organizations, as well as architectural work dealing with other designs in the military, to help create an extra layer against any supposed oncoming attacks from missiles onto the perimeters itself of the lands. Possible hypersonic and ballistic tracking space sensors, satellites through turns that could track down posing threats and deactivate them at will, as well as finding out where it come from.
Interesting.
Architectural work to space designs to a molecular stance to besides dealing with that in order to maintain proper defensive systems. And we got to understand, why would he even integrate this in the first place, an actual Golden Dome? Why would we have to put more safety out there? We shouldn't have to. It should be set as the Golden Age. We're dealing with attacks from other countries still. And they do not want to improvise properly and create good etiquette back. We're dealing with Ukraine's.
I apologize. Let me just jump in here real quick because I have two family friends that are citizens of a European country, and they come here to visit twice a year for several weeks, if not a month at a time. And they're fortunate to be able to be in a position to do that. They're not, super rich, but they're able to live comfortably over there and still come here and visit. The press and the words on the street and the fake news in Europe is nobody go to the United States because they're going to lock you up, detain you, and then deport you. So this kind of goes with what you're saying here, but I want to make sure that the dome works. It works for our partners in the Middle East, but my question is can it overcome the fake news and the propaganda? I mean, it's great to have this giant defensive thing, but if you can't overcome the fake news, what are we doing? Sorry.
The Golden Dome itself, that scenario is just projective against any supposedly oncoming missile attacks that could hit the land, as well as electromagnetic and field lines, possibly. But why would we even have that threat even into our minds and set here? Generally, this has to come to a stance. If they're going to start attacking each other, to create a layer and deactivate that at will, and then we got to do it everywhere until everyone succumbs to an actual better age, fine. But we do not need to keep at this. Maybe it's a momentum to help carry out their, hey, get it right. We have to protect ourselves because we don't feel safe. Maybe this planet needs to take a turnaround and consider its own actions that it's causing. And we have to lock things down. We can't let certain entities in. We may have to get rid of them, take them out, to remove them from this country, because possibly there are others out there that don't know how to act accordingly. I mean, if the planet just comes to one stand and everyone maintains one order, we won't have this problem. We won't have to feel this way. Humans won't have to feel this way. They wouldn't have to create an extra type of layer of protection around them because of the same type of race of human coming in. That's nonsense. You got to get it together and stop the corruption, slow it down, and ultimately stop it with each other. Weapons are no good unless the same species. Weapons are only good if they're protecting the actual impacted layer of where that species is. And it doesn't come to the point where it has to create such a destructive force upon each other.
It's what they want. When I say they, you can put whoever you want in that. I'm not assigning that pronoun to anybody, but I'm just saying, if we're so busy battling each other, we're not going to be paying attention to the bigger things. So that's just crazy. And I'm thankful for your positions with the Space Force and the Federation to bring that stuff to light.
Well, there's so much amount of corruption going on, and we are so close to we're this close to a World War III of a physical layer. There has already been a World War III of a monumental biogenetic layer humans have not been known about. We talked about before. We don't want the physical layer. The physical layer comes, they're off to using nuclear weapons. They're off to using such en masse destruction of kill the human species altogether. This is not the way to go. When nuclear radiation hits the molecular structure of mankind and the definitive nature of that around it, it screws everything up. Is that what you want to do? Get rid of that scientific equation. Utilize that scientific equation for something that will help, that will create an asset for the human species. That's why other species out there, including rays, use gamma radiation and other types of radiation as a power source. We use it as something even for generative healing. We use it as something as a higher impact scenario. Humans can't do that because they want to think about destructive layers. They're like onions. They have layers and layers of things. And sometimes it creates layers and layers of bad.
Crazy
It
stuff.
also goes into the multiple human Democrats, what they want to call it, those that are not on a negative stance, attacking the Tesla dealerships, attacking the vehicles, mass fire scattered everywhere. That's been going around. I mean, more destruction. Humans, as a species, it's not going to go right. You think you want to go into other planetized systems? We wouldn't allow it because you just destroy it. You just slow down the way you perceive.
Absolutely.
My gosh, if you want to become more Neanderthal, then go back to Native American, but on a good wavelength. Start learning that way.
Crazy stuff. We could get into many topics as an offshoot of that stuff. It was just crazy. Hey, let's talk about the ET, or the mythical creature of the week.
All right. The Tisar. The Tisar also runs into the third planet. They possess slight lizardoid features. So they're reptilian in nature, but they're also humanoid. There are variations that run in through certain natures here. I believe more in the eastern perimeters, like China, Thailand, Korea, what if you not, that have the hybridization points of these species here on this planet. But before we run into that, they're characterized with slanted golden eyes. Despite their features, the skins are remarkably human-like, with a glistening pale hue. They have palm-like hands and feet, indicating their amphibious nature. Now, the species definitive of this mode that are not in hybrid mode, they do have a certain areas that they run under in tunnel systems, underground systems that linked up into the eastern areas of this planet. There are several other close species intact like these, and they're more of an equal standard, so they're not really negative. They just run on an own subliminal mode. They have been attacked before in their planet of origin and or planets of origin, and had to escape by more negative entities of lizard-like origin.
So what I'm getting from you is, this is a bad guy or a good guy, or in between? In between, more or less. There are escapees from other planets and systems. They had to go into similar planets and systems like this because they have been destroyed. Am I going to run into one of these?
If you do, I wouldn't worry. They're not out to harm.
All right. Because I've learned from the SCP stuff, so you have to ask if I ever see one of these and just put that away. I probably will never happen, but just in case. Is this a race that you think has at times worked closely with us and maybe at times worked against us? Is that what we mean by in between?
There are levels of hybrids like ourselves that are amidst among them, more of the Eastern standards and more of the reptilian nature. And then there are ones that are more of the in-ground frequencies, underground in certain elevated areas, and are maintained by secretive governments in zones. And they keep to themselves. There are not many of them out there, but they do run an in hybrid status coda too. We talked about how we've seen the Draconians before, shapeshifters, and how they have some type of DNA contact. Well, there are other hybrids like that, different types of races of terrestrials. I mean, grays like myself, we have variables. They're intact variables that can link up between us and subspecies of our own. And they have 2 layers of that.
Touch on that just for a second, if you would, because we may have some new listeners, some new viewers. You said grays like ourselves because you're a fusel. Explain what that is, please.
In hybrid status, coda speed is an allegorical strand of another definitive nature run into a host itself. And once it runs into the host, it's able to augment its layers and reciprocals. So the molecular structure is defined more defined, or is defined more in nature, and it has a more of a productive layer to the inner psyche awareness, as well as certain hyper awareness streams that could affect the way the entity is, the host is.
Curious stuff. Interesting stuff. Interesting. And that's it. I think we're out of time. Yes, we are. We are out of time just like that. I love it when we go a little extra, but I love it when I think it's so important. I think there's a lot of discussion still to be had here in everything we've talked to today. And if you're like me, you'll go back and listen again. I enjoy doing that. But again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Episode 70 in the books, Blue. That's a huge accomplishment. Congratulations.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you.